The roar of the private helicopter's turbine tore through the austere silence of the Rocky Mountains, an alien sound against the almost religious quiet that enveloped the Williams estate. Robert Williams, at 42 years old, scarred by the smoke and relentless sun of California and Colorado, was a living legend in the Forest Service. As chief of an elite brigade of mountain firefighters, Robert didn't just fight fire. He understood it. His home, a formidable mansion of pine logs and glass, nestled on a secluded Colorado peak, was a paradox, a luxurious refuge he seldom inhabited, preferring the Spartan solitude of firefighting camps. For the past 5 years, work wasn't merely his profession, it was his only sanctuary. It was where he could channel the agonizing pain that had settled in his chest after the tragedy. 5 years and 2 months ago, Sarah Thompson, his wife, a passionate biologist who studied post-fire ecology, had died in a helicopter crash while inspecting a controlled burn area. The grief was a wildfire Robert couldn't extinguish, and the worst aftermath of that grief manifested in his daughter, Brenda. Brenda Williams, now 5 years old, was a child with large gray eyes, but inside, she was enveloped in a silence that felt as dense as smoke. Since the day of her mother's funeral, Brenda stopped speaking. It wasn't a passing selective mutism. It was as if joy itself had torn away her voice. Robert, the man who commanded hundreds of men and women in life-or-death situations, was helpless against his own daughter's silence. He had flown with her to Houston, to the Mayo Clinic, to specialized children's trauma centers in Boston. He spent over $5 million on experimental therapies, renowned pediatric neuropsychologists, and even a grief specialist who used therapeutic horsemanship. Nothing. Brenda continued to observe the world through an invisible pane of glass, only nodding or shaking her head, carrying a weight far beyond her small body. Robert's return was extraordinarily early. He was scheduled to spend another 20 days at the base camp, monitoring a persistent wildfire in the Arapahoe National Forest. However, a sudden change in weather, bringing unexpected rains, put the team on standby, and Robert, unable to bear the inactivity, for inactivity meant thinking, ordered the pilot to take him home, without giving anyone notice. He needed silence, but a different kind of silence. The silence of the mountains, not the silence of his daughter. Landing at the heliport on his property, he stepped out with the heavy gait of someone carrying more than safety gear. The house looked even colder and emptier than he remembered. Upon entering, he heard something that stopped him in the middle of the large, rustic great room. It wasn't Brenda's silence, but a soft sound coming from the exterior area, the stone patio leading to the aspen forest. It was the sound of laughter, and it wasn't the guttural, familiar laugh of Martha Baker, the 70-year-old governess who had managed the house for 3 decades. It was a youthful laugh, followed by an even more unexpected sound, a low, humming chant in Spanish. He found it odd. Robert advanced towards the service area and the rustic outdoor kitchen. What he saw made his blood run cold, a visceral fear climbing his throat, more intense than any danger he had ever faced on a fire line. The new temporary cleaner, cook, Mrs. Baker, had hired a young woman named Jessica Sanchez, who had only been in the house for 28 days, was not cleaning the walnut cabinets or scrubbing the travertine floor, which was her strict job. She was in the outdoor stone laundry area. Fear gave way to fury. Jessica, barely 28 years old with a face that looked too weary for her age, was using an old aluminum basin, which belonged to Mrs. Baker, to soap and wash a pile of linen sheets, a manual task she had insisted on doing to save on electricity. And there was Brenda, the girl who wouldn't speak, not on her shoulders, but sitting comfortably inside the wash basin itself, floating in the foam, her little legs dangling out. Jessica held her securely with one hand on her waist, the other scrubbing the sheets around the basin. Brenda was splashing water, laughing openly, silently but with her mouth wide in pure delight, while Jessica hummed a Mexican lullaby, her voice a thread of honey and exhaustion. It was a scene of reckless danger and unprecedented joy, all at once. "What in hell do you think you're doing?" Robert's shout, forged in years of command during emergencies, echoed through the log cabin. The deep, authoritative voice made Jessica jump. The basin rocked. Jessica, pale, stopped the humming and pulled Brenda out of the basin in a swift movement, holding her as if she were made of porcelain. She placed her gently on the ground. Her body was trembling. "Mr. Williams, I'm so sorry. We were just playing. She She asked me to get in. She asked. The word echoed, but Robert didn't hear it, buried under the wave of panic. The sight of his daughter in a container of water, a second away from falling, hit him like a flashback of Sarah's helicopter going down. The memory of the disaster consumed him. Playing? Robert advanced, ignoring Brenda, who was now shrinking behind Jessica's legs. His firefighter uniform, still smeared with soot and resin, looked like the cloak of an angry judge. "Are you crazy, woman? You're washing my clothes and you put my daughter hanging out in a water basin. What if she slips? What if she hits her head? What if she drowns?" He gestured wildly, rage distorting his features. "You were hired to cook and clean, not to put my daughter at risk of drowning or falling. You are an employee, Mrs. Sanchez, not a nursery school educator." Jessica backed away, her eyes brimming with tears but firm. "Sir, I swear she was safe. I was holding her the whole time. I would never let—" "I don't care what you would or wouldn't do." Robert cut her off, his voice dropping to a dangerous growl. "You don't have the right to do anything with my daughter other than clean her if she's dirty. Your job is with the house's dirt. Don't touch her." He pulled her by the arm, dragging her away from Brenda. Brenda, startled by the explosive shouting, began to cry softly, not the desperate sobs of grief, but a cry of disappointment and fear of her father. Mrs. Baker, the governess, hurried over, her thin-rimmed glasses slipping down her nose. "Oh, Mr. Williams, what is happening?" "This woman was playing with Brenda in the wash basin. It's negligence, Mrs. Baker. I must fire her immediately." Robert pulled Brenda toward him, but the girl resisted, pushing his chest and turning back toward Jessica. Mrs. Baker gave Jessica a long, searching look. "Miss Sanchez, please go to your room. I will handle the paperwork." Jessica looked at Brenda one last time, her heart aching. The little girl was reaching a hand out toward her, a silent plea. Jessica lowered her head and withdrew. Robert felt the pain of Brenda's rejection, but ignored it, convinced he had acted as a protective father. "Mrs. Baker, handle this. She's unsuitable. Pay her what she's owed and send her away today." And with the blind arrogance of a man accustomed to command, Robert went to his office, believing he had restored order and safety. However, the safety he sought was merely the cold vacuum of control. That night Brenda ate nothing and returned to sit on the stone patio floor, looking at the empty aluminum basin, waiting for a voice that wouldn't return. The days following Jessica Sanchez's dismissal were a frigid plunge into darkness for the Williams mansion. Brenda's silence was no longer just the absence of sound. It had transformed into a physical presence, a secondary mourning that seemed to suffocate the thick Persian rugs and the stone fireplaces. The girl, who previously wandered the house like an apathetic ghost, now regressed. She developed terrible nightmares, waking every night with high-pitched screams, calling for her mother in incomprehensible whispers. The only time she made sounds were in her night terrors. During the day, her routine was reduced to a painful ritual. She sat on the travertine floor of the outdoor laundry, hugging an old linen sheet that Jessica had washed, staring at the back door as if awaiting the return of a banished angel. Robert, paralyzed, tried everything. He brought a Siberian husky puppy, which she ignored, installed an imported cedar playground, which she didn't even look at, and took her to watch the 4th of July fireworks. The noise only made her cry. Nothing. Brenda fixed her gaze on nothing, and Robert's heart broke into increasingly dense silences. It was on the 13th day of Jessica's absence that Martha Baker, the governess, who served him with the stoic loyalty of the mountains, finally summoned the courage. She found him in the large pine office, where he was studying a wildfire risk map with maniacal intensity. Mrs. Baker, in her early 70s, was not one for beating around the bush. She crossed her arms and looked at Robert, who was 15 years her junior, as if he were a reckless boy. "Mr. Williams, with all the respect I owe you for 31 years of service, you made a terrible mistake." Robert looked up from the map, surprised by her direct boldness. "Mrs. Baker, what are you saying? That woman put Brenda in danger." "No, sir, she did not. You saw the scene, but you missed the moment. You saw the danger, but you didn't see the joy." Miss Sanchez was not being irresponsible. She was being, for the first time in 5 years, a surrogate mother. Mrs. Baker adjusted her glasses, and her voice gained an unusual solemnity. "I observed her for nearly 45 minutes before you arrived. Brenda hasn't laughed like that since the accident. She wasn't being forced, she was alive." "But the basin of water?" What if she had fallen? Robert tried to argue, but the governess cut him off with the authority of a matriarch. She did not fall, because Ms. Sanchez held her with the firmness of someone who has something to lose. And most importantly, sir, I heard her. Robert froze. Heard what? Mrs. Baker sighed, and her eyes moistened slightly. I heard Brenda speak. Not a scream, not a nightmare moan, but a full sentence. I was cleaning the hallway, and I heard Brenda gesturing to the basin and saying, I want to get in, Auntie Jessie. I want to get in and make the big foam. Those were her first words in 5 years, sir. And you arrived shouting, treating the woman like dirt, and you destroyed the bridge we had just built to pull your daughter out of her silent prison. You scared her and silenced her again. The blood drained from Robert's face. He felt nauseous. $6.5 million in treatment, and the answer came in the form of a humble cleaner, an aluminum basin, and a lullaby. And he, in his blind fear and pride as a failed father, had destroyed it all. Why didn't you tell me this before, Mrs. Baker? Why did you wait? Because you were out of control, sir. You weren't listening. You were only reacting to the fear of loss, and that fear, my dear Robert, made you as deaf as your daughter is silent. Mrs. Baker left the office, leaving Robert alone with the crushing weight of his guilt. The realization hit him with the force of a falling pine log. He rushed to Jessica's room in the house annex, knocking on the door. Silence. He opened it. Empty. The bed was made with the humble precision of someone who didn't have much to store. He called the temporary agency in Denver that had referred Jessica. No one knew where she lived. She had used the address of her former community pastor for the registration. In the following days, Robert dedicated himself to finding Jessica with the same ferocity with which he fought an uncontrolled fire. He used his contacts in the Air Force, his friends in the Border Patrol, and finally hired a team of private investigators from Salt Lake City. It took 18 days. They found her in South Tucson, Arizona, more than 850 miles away, living in an unfinished apartment complex in a low-income neighborhood with her grandmother, Abuela Maria, and her younger brother, Daniel Lopez, who was 13 years old. That very night, Robert flew to Tucson, rented a pickup truck. He didn't want to arrive in a luxury car, and drove to the address. He climbed 4 flights of poorly lit stairs, the hot, dense desert air suffocating him, a stark contrast to the thin air of the mountains. He knocked on the metal door. Abuela Maria, a small, stooped woman with suspicious eyes, opened it. Who are you, sir? We aren't buying anything. I need to speak with Jessica Sanchez. It's about a job. Jessica, who was in the cramped living room helping Daniel with his homework, appeared. Seeing Robert, her face became an impenetrable mask of pain and resentment. The exhaustion was palpable on her shoulders. What do you want, Mr. Williams? Her voice was low but sharp as glass. Robert, the man who shouted orders to helicopters and chainsaws, choked. He removed his baseball cap, feeling small. I came here to ask for your forgiveness, Jessica. She crossed her arms, her posture rigid, suspicious. Oh, yes. And do you think that resolves the humiliation you put me through? Treating me like a criminal in front of Mrs. Baker for making your daughter smile? No, it doesn't resolve it. I know it doesn't, but I had to try. Brenda, she is very unwell. She has regressed. She's not eating properly. She just sits on the laundry floor, holding the sheet you washed. She's waiting for you. Tears welled up in Jessica's eyes. Brenda's pain was an open wound to her. And you expect me to come back after being called irresponsible, after being fired for doing the only job that was truly worthwhile in that place? All I did was care for her with a little human love. Robert felt his throat dry. I was an idiot, a complete arrogant jerk. I was scared. Scared? Of what? A basin of water? No, he whispered, his voice cracking. Scared of losing her too, of someone getting close and me failing again to protect her. Like I failed Sarah, I associated risk with loss, and the first thing I did was push away the only person who was bringing her back. Robert slumped slightly against the door frame. Jessica took a long breath, her face softening. You don't protect her, Mr. Williams, when you push away those who love her. You just isolate her, and you isolate yourself. Could you please just see her? Once. Just so she knows you're okay. She needs that to move forward. Jessica hesitated, the image of little Brenda reaching out her arm, tormenting her. She looked at Abuela Maria, who only nodded. All right, she said, her voice low. But that's it. I'm not coming back to be a cleaner, Mr. Williams. Robert's confession and Jessica's realization bring the story to its emotional peak. The reunion is imminent. We'd love for you to be part of our storytelling community. If you identified with Robert's pain of loss or with Jessica's dignity and strength, consider subscribing to the channel. Your presence helps us bring more narratives of healing and new beginnings to life. And to interact with the story, if you could give Robert Williams one single piece of advice on how to be a better father to Brenda at that moment, what would it be? Leave your reflection in the comments. Jessica returned to the Williams mansion the following morning. Martha Baker opened the door with teary, relieved eyes, guiding Jessica to the laundry area where Brenda was. Robert watched from afar, from the shadow of his office door, unable to approach, afraid of ruining the moment again. Brenda was sitting in the same spot, hugging the worn sheet, her large grey eyes fixed on the tree line. She looked smaller, more fragile. When she saw Jessica, Brenda became paralyzed, a statue of childhood marble. Jessica knelt slowly on the travertine floor, unhurried. "Hello, my little aspen flower," she whispered, her voice soft as the mountain breeze. "Auntie Jessie just came to give you a little kiss and see how you are." Brenda's paralysis broke. She began to cry, a loud, desperate sound, but not of sadness. It was the cry of relief and certainty. In an impulse, she ran and threw herself into Jessica's arms with surprising strength, nearly knocking her over. "Auntie Jessie! Auntie Jessie came back!" she sobbed, her voice small and rusty from disuse but unmistakable. She clung to Jessica's neck, the smell of homemade soap and lavender that Jessica carried, a balm. Robert, hidden, felt his legs give way. He sat heavily on the polished wooden floor of the hallway and cried, for the first time without restraint, since Sarah's funeral. He wasn't crying for his dead wife at that moment, but for his living daughter, whom he had just recovered. He finally understood the essence of the lesson. Jessica was not a risk to be managed or an employee to be controlled. She was the answer he had sought in every hospital and clinic in the world, the bridge connecting Brenda back to life. After Brenda, exhausted, fell asleep in Jessica's lap, her face wet with dried tears, Robert called Jessica to the office to talk. The tense silence of before was replaced by a strange, respectful quietness. "Jessica, I want you to come back. Not as a cleaner or cook, but as the person who was taking care of Brenda. I will pay you 6 times what the agency was paying you, whatever you want. I will open an account for you." Robert was stumbling over his words, offering money, the only tool he knew. Jessica interrupted him, her voice firm and unwavering. "I don't want your money, Mr. Williams. I want respect. I want the dignity you took from me." Robert lowered his head, feeling the shame burn. "You are absolutely right. I humiliated you. I treated you with contempt and only backed down when I realized I needed you to fix my daughter. That is not respect. It is the purest, most selfish convenience." "I know." "Then change. Let me see that change." "I can change. Let me prove it." Jessica sighed, looking out at the vastness of the mountains through the large window. "All right, I will come back, but with 4 conditions, Mr. Williams, and you must agree to all of them, without exception, whatever they are. First, I am not a domestic worker. My title will be Therapeutic Educator for Brenda. I will care for her my way, with affection, with play, with freedom, and without you watching me with suspicion every second. If you don't trust my method, I won't stay." "Sealed," Robert agreed, feeling unexpected relief. "Second, I dropped out of college for my degree in child psychology and development in Phoenix when I needed to work full-time to help my grandmother and brother. If I stay, you will pay for my studies, books, and materials, and I will have dedicated time for them. When I graduate, I will be treated as a colleague, not as an employee who turned into a charity project of a billionaire." "Completely agreed." Robert nodded, already grabbing his tablet to note the details. "Third, my brother, Daniel Lopez, who is 13, and my grandmother, Abuela Maria. They live in a precarious situation in Tucson. If you really want to help me, or rather help Brenda heal because we are a package, you will arrange for Daniel to be enrolled in the best preparatory school in the area and for my grandmother to have a safe and dignified home where I can visit them frequently. I will not accept anything for myself besides the salary and the education, but my family must be secure. Fourth condition," Jessica added, looking him straight in the eye. "You must apologize to Martha Baker for disrespecting her professional judgment." Robert smiled for the first time, a genuine smile that hadn't appeared on his austere face in years. "Done, Jessica. Don't worry about the logistics. Consider it solved. Welcome back." He extended his hand. The handshake sealed a pact that was more than a work contract. It was an agreement of humanity. The next day, Robert gathered all 7 employees of the estate in the main living room. Jessica was there, looking uneasy. Robert, standing before everyone, took a deep breath. "I called everyone here because I need to do something I should have done at the right moment. I need to apologize publicly." He turned to Jessica. "Jessica, I humiliated you, shouted at you in front of everyone, treated you as if you were disposable and worthless. I was completely wrong. You were not being irresponsible. You were being what no doctor or therapist could be. You were giving life back to my daughter. I, out of fear, out of pride, and out of foolishness, destroyed that. Forgive me." Jessica's cheeks were flushed, and she tried to intervene, but Robert stopped her. "I needed to. If I made a mistake in front of everyone, I ask for forgiveness in front of everyone too." And to everyone's shock, Chief Robert Williams knelt before Jessica Sanchez. "Do you accept my sincere apology, Jessica?" Jessica, emotional, pulled him up. "I accept, Mr. Williams. Please stand up." Robert stood, hugged her briefly, and cried on her shoulder, a true catharsis. Mrs. Baker wiped her own tears. Jessica returned to caring for Brenda with complete freedom, and Brenda flourished. She started talking again, laughing, running, and singing Mexican lullabies with Jessica. Robert, who used work as an escape, began returning earlier, just to watch the two of them play, his heart slowly thawing. 2 years later, Brenda and Jessica were in the sunny garden, planting blue spruce saplings. "Why do we plant evergreens, Auntie Jessie?" Brenda asked. "Because each one represents a good feeling we want to grow, my flower. This one is courage. This one here is hope," Jessica explained. "And can we plant one for Mommy Sarah?" Jessica smiled with tears in her eyes. "Of course, my love." Robert, watching from the porch, was moved to see the tree dedicated to Sarah Thompson, the biologist who loved the forest. Beside it, Jessica planted another, without him knowing, and named it New Beginning. The connection between Robert and Jessica deepened. They discussed Brenda's pedagogy, Daniel's future and life. They shared pain and joy. One night at the hospital, when Brenda was ill with pneumonia, a fever of 105 $, and delirious, calling for both mothers, Robert and Jessica spent the entire night by her side. When Brenda finally woke up, she looked at Jessica, who was sleeping exhaustedly in the armchair, and then at her father. "Daddy?" "Yes, sweetie. Auntie Jessie is like Mommy Sarah. She cares the same. She loves the same. But it hurts less to remember Mommy when Auntie Jessie is close." "Why does it hurt less, my love?" "Because Mommy Sarah went to heaven, but Auntie Jessie stayed here, and she takes care of us the way Mommy did." In that moment, at 4:30 a.m., in the smell of alcohol and medication, Robert understood. Loving again was not betraying Sarah. It was honoring the legacy of affection she left behind. 3.5 years later, Jessica graduated with honors in child psychology and development. Daniel was in preparatory school, and Abuela Maria had a comfortable little house at the base of the mountain. Robert sold a part of his company and founded the Sarah Thompson Callahan Foundation, an educational organization focused on children with grief and trauma, using Jessica's pedagogical methods. On the day of the foundation's inauguration, Robert called Jessica to the evergreen garden. "Jessica, I need to tell you something." "Tell me, Robert." She called him Robert only in intimate moments, an old joke about a name he didn't use. "I love you." Jessica froze. "Robert, you can't say that. I am your employee. I take care of your daughter. I know the difference between gratitude and love. I love you, Jessica. I love you since the day I saw you singing with Brenda. I love you because you taught me how to be a father, and I love you because you taught me how to live again." Jessica began to cry. "I love you too, Robert. But I'm scared of ruining everything, of Brenda suffering." Robert held her face with both hands. "We won't ruin it, because I won't make the mistake of pushing you away ever again." And he kissed her. They got married. 4 years after the reunion in the laundry, Brenda, now 9 years old, was guiding a group of children through the evergreen garden. In her lap, a baby slept, her little brother, Justin, 7 months old. "This is where we plant evergreens with the names of feelings," she explained proudly. "Each one is for something good we want to grow. My mother Sarah taught this to my dad, and my mother Jessica taught it to everyone. One of the children asked, "Do you have two moms?" Brenda smiled, holding Justin lovingly. "I do. The first one gave me life. The second one taught me to love life." Robert and Jessica watched from a distance. He with his arm around her, she nestled on his shoulder. They were the new beginning, proving that love, like fire, can be destructive, but it can also forge a new and stronger existence from the ashes. If this story touched your heart and made you reflect on the true value of dignity and affection, join our community. Subscribe so you don't miss the next narratives of healing and inspiration. What city are you watching this story from? We'd love to know where our feelings are blooming. Did you like Robert and Jessica's journey? And what was the most important lesson you learned from little Brenda? Share in the comments. Your opinion is what gives life to our stories.